If you've been keeping an eye on what the team just pulled off, you probably already feel like something sneaky good just happened. This wasn't one of those flashy, headline-type moves, but the more you look into it, the more it feels like they seriously got away with something here. And honestly, I don't think enough people are talking about how big this could turn out to be. And if you're a true fan, be sure to click the like button and write in the comments, "Go Seahawks." The Seattle Seahawks may have just pulled off one of the most underrated heists of the entire NFL draft. And the deeper you dig into what really happened, the clearer it becomes that this front office walked away with far more value than anyone expected. What we're seeing unfold isn't just a solid draft class, it's a strategic reload that could quietly reshape key areas of this roster moving forward. Let's start with the name that's beginning to generate serious buzz once you actually study the tape and production: Bud Clark. At first glance, this wasn't the flashy, headline-grabbing pick that dominated national coverage, but that might be exactly why it's so dangerous for the rest of the league. Clark brings a profile that screams impact, especially when you look at what he consistently did over a long stretch at TCU. This isn't a one-year breakout player or a projection-based gamble. He played 61 games in college, and that kind of experience matters when transitioning into the NFL. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Clark isn't just experienced. He's productive in the most game-changing way possible. We're talking about a defensive back who recorded 15 interceptions over his final 4 years, combined with multiple forced fumbles and recoveries. That's not luck. That's instinct, awareness, and a natural ability to find the football. And for a Seahawks team that has always thrived when their defense creates turnovers, this fits perfectly into the identity they're trying to rebuild. What stands out even more is how he gets those turnovers. Clark reads quarterbacks with a level of anticipation that instantly reminds you of the greats who have worn this uniform before. There's a discipline to his positioning, a patience in coverage, and then, when the moment comes, he strikes. That center field ability, that freedom to roam and dictate plays from deep, could be exactly how Seattle maximizes his strengths early on. But don't mistake him for a one-dimensional safety. He's not afraid to come downhill and hit. In fact, he openly models his game after Cam Chancellor. And that's not something you say lightly in Seattle. If you're going to carry that comparison, you better bring physicality. And Clark does. Still, where he might truly shine is as that deep safety who reads everything in front of him and turns defensive possessions into sudden momentum swings. Another key factor here is reliability. Too often, teams fall in love with athletic traits and ignore production. That's not the case with Clark. He's shown over a large sample size that he can consistently perform, tackle efficiently, and make smart decisions. That lowers the risk dramatically. This isn't a developmental project. It's a player who could contribute in multiple packages right away, whether that's nickel, dime, or rotating into deeper coverage looks. And then there's the mentality. This might be the most overlooked part of the entire pick. Clark isn't coming into the league hoping to fit in. He's coming in expecting to elevate the standard. When he talked about filling big shoes and making them even bigger, that wasn't just confidence. It was intent. That mindset aligns perfectly with what Seattle has been trying to recapture since the Legion of Boom era faded: competition, edge, and accountability. Now shift the focus to the offensive side, because the Seahawks didn't stop there. Bo Stevens might end up being the pick that surprises even more people once the season begins. Drafted on day 3, Stevens already looks like someone who could realistically compete for a starting role at right guard. And if that happens, you're talking about tremendous value for where he was selected. What makes Stevens so intriguing is how well he fits the system Seattle wants to run. He graded as one of the top zone-blocking guards coming out of college. And that's critical because this offense is expected to lean heavily into that scheme. You don't need elite speed at that position. You need technique, leverage, awareness, and consistency. And those are exactly the traits he brings. Yes, there are concerns about his athletic ceiling. He's not the kind of lineman who blows you away with combine numbers. But here's the reality. Offensive line success in the NFL has never been about straight-line speed. It's about winning your matchup, controlling defenders, and executing assignments without mistakes. Stevens excels in those areas. He doesn't give up sacks, limits pressures, and plays with a level of control that coaches trust. And maybe the most telling detail? Even when defenses knew what was coming, especially in a run-heavy system like Iowa's, he still performed at a high level. That speaks volumes. When opponents can't stop you even when they anticipate the play, that's when you know a player has something real. So now you step back and look at the bigger picture. The Seahawks added a turnover machine on defense and a fundamentally sound, scheme-perfect lineman on offense. Both at values that feel lower than where they should have gone. That's how you build depth. That's how you create internal competition. And that's how you quietly set yourself up to outperform expectations. The question now is how quickly these moves translate onto the field. Can Bud Clark carve out a role early and become that ball-hawking presence this defense has been missing? Can Bo Stevens actually push for a starting job and solidify the offensive line sooner than expected? Because if even one of those hits right away, this draft already looks like a win. If both do, then we might be talking about one of the most impactful Seahawks draft classes in recent memory. So looking at everything the Seahawks just pulled off here, do you believe Bud Clark and Bo Stevens can live up to this steal label and make an immediate impact in Seattle? Or do you think expectations might be getting a little too high? And that's where things start to get even more compelling when you project this forward into the actual season. Because this isn't just about what these players were in college. It's about how their specific traits translate into what Mike Macdonald is trying to build right now in Seattle. There's a very clear shift happening with this team, especially defensively, toward versatility, intelligence, and playmaking. Bud Clark checks every one of those boxes, and if he develops the way this staff believes he can, you're not just talking about a rotational piece. You're potentially looking at a centerpiece in sub-packages that thrives on chaos. Think about the impact a true ball hawk can have in today's NFL. Games swing on possessions, and possessions swing on turnovers. If Clark even comes close to replicating the instincts he showed at TCU, quarterbacks are going to have to think twice before testing the middle of the field. That alone changes how opponents attack Seattle. It creates hesitation, and hesitation is exactly what a fast, aggressive defense feeds on. Now, layer that into a secondary that already has flexibility, and suddenly you're seeing a unit that can disguise coverages, rotate looks, and bait quarterbacks into mistakes. Clark's ability to read eyes and react isn't just a nice bonus. It's a tactical weapon. And if he earns trust early, don't be surprised if his role expands quicker than expected. On the offensive side, Bo Stevens represents something Seahawks fans have been asking for over and over again: stability in the trenches. For years, inconsistency along the offensive line has held this team back in key moments. So when you bring in a player whose calling card is doing the little things right every single snap, that matters more than any flashy measurable. What makes Stevens particularly valuable is how clean his game is. There's efficiency in his movement, discipline in his assignments, and a level of physicality that shows up when it counts. He's not going to be the guy blowing up highlight reels, but he might be the guy who quietly shuts down interior pressure and keeps the pocket clean. And for an offense that wants to establish rhythm, especially in the run game, That's critical. There's also a bigger roster implication here that can't be ignored. If Stevens legitimately pushes for that starting right guard spot, it forces competition across the entire line. And competition, as we've seen in Seattle's best years, is what brings out the highest level of performance. Even if he doesn't start immediately, the pressure he applies raises the floor of the group. And this is where the draft as a whole starts to feel different. It's not just about filling holes. It's about creating internal battles, adding players who fit a clear identity, and building depth that actually has upside. Too many times, late-round picks are viewed as long shots. But when you hit on even one of them, it changes the trajectory of your roster construction. When you hit on two, now you're talking about real momentum. There's also something to be said about the mentality both of these players bring. Clark, with his confidence and edge, Stevens with his work ethic and toughness, those aren't just buzzwords. Those are traits that shape locker rooms. And for a team that's trying to reestablish a dominant culture, those details matter just as much as on-field production. So when you step back and look at everything together, it's hard not to see why there's growing excitement around what the Seahawks just did. They didn't just draft players. They identified value, targeted fit, and added competitors who align with the direction of the franchise. That's how sustainable success is built. Now, it's all about execution. Training camp will be the first real test. Preseason reps will start to tell the story. And once the regular season hits, we'll find out just how real this potential actually is. But one thing is already clear. The Seahawks didn't play it safe in this draft. They played it smart. And if this class delivers the way it's starting to look on paper, the rest of the NFL might be looking back wondering how Seattle managed to pull this off. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, drop a like on the video, and don't forget to click on the video that's on your screen right now. If you want to stay on top of everything happening with the Seahawks and get all the latest updates first, this is the place to be. Go Seahawks!